Hello, and welcome to A Renewed Life Global. Discover secrets to heal emotional wounds, set boundaries, and move forward. I am your host, Dr. Beverly Carter. The title of today's interview is Boundaries That Create More Heart Connection. And we welcome Veronica Monet. Veronica is an internationally acclaimed sexual and spiritual empowerment change agent. CNN, Fox, Politically Incorrect, Yale, Stanford, UC Berkeley are just a few of the numerous news and educational institutions that have hosted Veronica for her forward thinking insights and expertise. Veronica helps individuals and couples heal shame, align with their spiritual core, and live more joyfully. As a relationship coach, sexologist, anger specialist, and empath, she combines her extensive education, experience with different and deep emotional intelligence and compassion. Having personally overcome incest, rape, violence, and abuse, she is committed to helping others own their personal and erotic empowerment. We welcome Veronica Monet. Welcome, welcome to this platform, Veronica.
Thank you, Beverly. I'm so honored to be here.
Oh, that's sweet. We really desperately want to hear from you today and learn from you today. I want to start out with something, that I've been tripping over a little bit. Your bio lists you, Veronica Monet, as an ACS. What is that?
Those are the letters after my name that stand for the American College of Sexologists. I was certified as a sexologist through the American College of Sexologists in 2007. I also have a certification as an anger specialist. So I am a relationship coach and I bring together sex and anger, which are two topics that are pretty taboo
Yeah.
and very fraught for a lot of people who are in relationship.
Wow. That's powerful. One of the things I want to start with are boundaries. And I think for you, boundaries are important. For all of us, boundaries are important.
I
So,
teach, yeah, go ahead.
no, after you.
Well, I teach boundaries. That's like that's the center of what I teach. And I have something called the Exquisite Partnership Formula, which is how to have a hard no while creating heart connection. Because I don't, I've studied a lot and learned a lot about boundaries over the last 3 decades of my own recovery. And I just found it lacking because it didn't take into account how we nurture our connections
Yes.
and the ways that a lot of us of all genders, but particularly people that are female identified, will sometimes caretake instead of self care. And I am on a mission to make sure we do both, take
Yeah.
care of ourselves and take care of our relationships. We
Yeah.
can do that. There's a way to do that, but it's not usually modeled or taught.
Sure. Sure. So, so why is it that the boundaries that we're typically taught to use don't work in our intimate relationships?
But really, there's several um, parts to my answer to your question. It's a great question. First and foremost, as a rape survivor, I realized there may be some other rape survivors watching right now, and I
I'm
want to
sure
make
of it.
sure that I cover something called tonic immobility. It's one of the phrase responses. So most of us have heard, fight or flight, and some of us have heard freeze. There's also something called fawning. These are four incredibly important survival mechanisms that are operated by the amygdala. Sometimes we refer that to as the reptilian brain. It's a primal part of our brain, and it goes into function when there's enormous stress. It doesn't really give us a chance to veto its decisions because it bypasses the prefrontal cortex. So, how does that look without all of the technical jargon? Basically, 97% of rape survivors have experienced some tonic immobility. It's frightening because during tonic immobility, you're not able to move or speak.
Mm,
This is why we know that asking a rape survivor, "Did you say no?" is a ridiculous question.
sure.
Did you fight back? Also, a stupid question. The vast majority of people who are sexually assaulted didn't say no and didn't fight back. It's rare, actually. to say no and fight back. Instead, there's a tremendous amount of fear operating in the brain, and it shuts down our ability to do anything except survive.
Yeah.
And what we can do with that is bring a tremendous amount of compassion and realize that this is something that evolved in our brain and kept our forebears alive. That's why we're here today, because somebody survived an attack.
Yes.
There's also something else that happens, and it happens in people who have penises, it happens in people who have vaginas. And that is that the fear or threat of being sexually assaulted can cause arousal in the genitals.
Okay.
Now, there's a theory that one of the reasons that the vagina will become aroused during an assault is because it prevents tearing. And this, again, was a survival mechanism. And it's built into the body. Why this happens for male bodies, nobody's actually developed a theory about that. It's probably because only recently have we uncovered the fact that it's possible for a male body to respond to an assault with an erection.
Mm-hmm.
So first and foremost, just speaking to any survivors who are watching this today, everything that happened for you was quote unquote normal.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be ashamed of. And I am here representing the shame-free zone. So I just want to say that right out the gate.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing. Let's talk about one of these other fear responses called fawning. If you have ever seen a dog frightened by something that his person is doing, you probably saw him coming over and trying to placate, maybe licking or rolling over on his back and showing his belly, all these ways of making himself look vulnerable and subservient.
Yeah.
Well, this happens a lot of times for human beings who are assaulted. And it's another great way to survive an assault. I was raped by a serial rapist, and I definitely fawned. And what that means is that I said flattering, complimentary things to him.
Mm-hmm.
And his apartment was set up as basically for sexual assault. All the windows and doors were locked with keys, so you couldn't get out unless you had the key. So I was trapped in there. And after the assault, then I just wanted to get out of there as quickly as I possibly could, but I wasn't sure if he was going to let me go. I could tell that he was emotionally imbalanced. I could tell that he had a violent streak. He wasn't violent towards me, except for raping me, but there were no bruises, no marks, no threat of violence. And my fawning, which I learned from being an incest survivor, really came in handy in that time. I was very careful to be sweet to him. And then he finally let me go. And like a lot of rapists, said he couldn't wait to see me again.
Of course. Mm.
Yeah. So without getting into the psychology of the rapist, I just want to say that really saved me. 3 weeks later, another young woman was raped by him, and he stabbed her in the face with a knife.
Mm.
So my gut instinct was survive and keep myself from as much harm as possible.
Right.
And that's the other thing I want to bring here is an honoring of the ways in which we shut down and the amygdala, the reptilian brain, takes over and saves our life.
Yes.
Now, you're in a relationship. You love and trust this person. You have picked them as your partner, and you feel good about the choice. But some things that they say or do trigger you.
Yes.
That's where we have to put our focus is, what are my triggers? What causes them? And how can I deal with them?
Right.
I'll give you a personal experience. Again, I love mining my own personal trauma for the benefit of others because it's so much more real than just talking about
we're grateful for it. Thank you.
technical things.
Thank you.
My father molested me by constantly touching my breasts. And a lot of times he used to come up from behind and grab my breasts. So when I got married, I had to assert a boundary with my husband and say, you can't come up from behind me and even grab me around the waist, but certainly don't touch my breast. And don't touch my breast while I'm talking. Now, what I was doing was I was mapping my triggers, and I took the responsibility of requesting the kind of boundaries that I needed in
Yes.
order to not get triggered. Now, why would my partner be willing to help me with that? Well, one, he loved me. But
Yeah.
two, it's not fun triggering somebody that you care about. You are bringing them love, you're bringing them empathy, you're bringing them affection, and all of a sudden they're triggered and, they're spinning out and getting angry with you. I didn't want to be angry and I didn't want him to feel hurt. So the best course of action for me, map my triggers, find out where they are, and then be proactive about it. Go to my husband and tell him, I need you not to touch me under these circumstances or in that way. Now, over time, because I've really honored and respected those triggers, and also because I have been in therapy for a lot of years, totally, you can't do this work without also being in some type of therapy. If you have some kind of trauma in your past, it's so important to get that support. And there's a lot of different kinds of therapy. I'll talk about that in a minute because I really want to highlight the ones that are good for trauma and the ones that don't work so well. Over time, I got to the point where it was okay. What he'd do is he'd come up and say, may I touch you? And I would take a breath and I'd check in with myself and I would figure out, was I okay with it? And sometimes I'd say, no, it doesn't feel right now. And other times I'd say, yes, and thank you for asking.
Yes.
So there's a way in which, as we start to surface our traumas, we don't have to be ashamed or apologetic, or we don't have to pretend they're not there. They are there, and it's okay. We didn't put them there. It's not our fault. There's nothing wrong with this. This is a normal response. If you ever doubt that, adopt a dog. Chances are, if that dog was in somebody else's household before you got to it and they surrendered it, they probably had some less than optimum interactions. I myself adopted an abused dog. It's not my fault that she has triggers, but she has triggers. And I had to figure out where those triggers were and start working with her around it. It's normal to have triggers.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's surmountable. It's something that you can grow past, heal past, move past if you're respectful of yourself.
Yeah. Now I know, I mean, the number of men, for example, that have walked through a similar experience to women in terms of being raped or, violated or sexually assaulted is, and I'm going to make the assumption, and it's just an assumption of my mind in the moment that, that the process in working through, say, those boundaries are basically the same. Would you say?
Yes, and to be clear, there are men who have been raped by women, again, because of the fact that the penis can become erect when it's frightened.
Right.
But of course, the incidence of men being perpetrated against by women is far less than women being perpetrated against by men.
Right.
And most of the men that are survivors of violence and sexual assault have been perpetrated against by a man. But the process, yes, is very much the same. And I have had the privilege of working with male survivors.
Yes.
And seeing that the part that's maybe a little more difficult is getting past the myth that all men want sex at all times.
Okay.
So I sometimes have to help my male clients come out of denial about the fact that they were assaulted. How it'll show up is like, I don't know why this bothers me. I don't know why I can't stop thinking about it. After all, she was pretty or willing, or what's the problem? What's wrong with me? Why didn't that work for me? Why am I upset? I don't get it. And then I have to go, well, let's look at what happened.
Yeah.
And so, women do perpetrate consent violations too. There's kind of this assumption sometimes that, well, I'm a woman, so I can just touch. I don't have to ask for permission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there a difference then between the way men and women express their boundaries?
Oh, huge.
Okay.
Huge. So, but there's a caveat to that. In an intimate long-term relationship,
Mhm.
the huge differences start to become less huge.
Okay.
There's a way in which almost all people that are in a relationship kind of bring a codependency to it,
Okay.
of not wanting to hurt the other person's feelings, and so not showing up and saying their truth. But if we back up and we don't talk about a committed relationship, there tends to be a way in which somebody who's male identified is more likely to simply just say, I don't like that. That doesn't work to me. I don't want to do that. Particularly if it's not about sex.
Okay.
And even if it's about sex, it's like, oh, don't touch me there. That doesn't do anything for me. But with women identified human beings, it's probably going to be more like a lot of caretaking, like, well, I don't want to hurt his feelings, and it'll be over soon. There was literally a New York Times headline during the height of the Me Too movement that said, when saying yes is easier than saying no. And not surprisingly, the article was written by two female journalists who recounted times that they had just kind of endured sex that they didn't really want to have.
Sure.
Because they thought that was easier than making a scene.
Mm.
And I want to just call something out here.
Sure.
If you allow your body to be touched in ways that you don't enjoy, you will pay a price for that. What will happen is that your body will start to numb out. So then when you do engage in touch that you do like, it won't feel as good.
Imagine.
And
Yeah.
long term, you may find yourself becoming anorgasmic, somebody who can't even have orgasms, or they'll be kind of small orgasms and not that satisfying. And eventually your libido might die. So it's really, really important to remember that your tissues are sacred.
Yeah.
And they can only be touched in ways that feel good and safe to you.
Yeah.
So that's an important boundary, but it's a hard one.
It's a very important one. And again, we hear the correlation between the mind and the body during this process and our healing, and most definitely within the trauma itself as we look at it and continue to work with it.
It's great if any of your viewers feel like reading a New York Times bestselling book. I want to recommend Vander Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you're familiar with it.
Oh, yes.
It's excellent because it also shows that there are certain things that work with trauma and certain things that don't.
That's right.
So CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, doesn't work very well with trauma. But EMDR and also IFS, internal family systems, those are two therapeutic models that work very well.
Yeah.
Yoga has a surprisingly good track record with trauma, so much so that the US government has actually started providing trauma-informed yoga to soldiers that suffer from PTSD.
PTSD, right? Yeah. Can you share a little bit more about IFS? I'm not sure that people are familiar with IFS.
Absolutely. So that was developed by somebody by the name of Richard Schwartz. And it goes on the idea that we are all carrying inside of us these different parts. You can think of them as multiple personalities if you want. But it's really just, I'll bring it down to earth for you. Let's say you'd say, I'm going to go on a diet. And then, despite your best efforts, it's almost as if there's somebody inside you sabotaging what you want to do. that's really because you have different parts and they have different wants, needs, and agendas. If you don't start becoming acquainted with all those different parts, they will sabotage.
Yes,
So getting to know them it's an intimacy journey of its own that can be kind of mind bending. I have met all kinds of different parts of myself. Some of them are still 8 years old, some of them are 4, some of them are 17. And the thing is that that's pretty common for trauma survivors.
sure.
It's a little more exaggerated for us because different parts kind of get frozen off and shut off from the whole. And we kind of, in order to function, especially if you're high functioning, you probably push those parts away so
Okay,
that you could get on with the business of having a successful life.
right.
So going back and reclaiming them is what IFS is about. But
Beautiful.
it's not just people that have trauma that have parts.
That's
So
right. All of us have parts, right?
yeah, and about trauma, in a lot of ways, we all carry a genetic trauma burden.
Yes.
The field of epigenetics has revealed that trauma can go out 7 generations.
Wow. Imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. So if there's anybody in your family tree that went to war, went to prison, was raped, murdered, suffered the Holocaust, um, was
Slavery.
was a slave,
Yeah.
you're carrying that.
Yeah.
And I want that to be inspiring to you
Yes.
because the thing is that the hard work you do to heal your trauma is not just for you, it's for the future generations, and you're also healing the past.
Yes. That's powerful. Really powerful. Yeah. That's powerful. I hope people are connecting to that nugget there. That's powerful. Yeah. Okay. You spoke a little bit earlier about triggers, and you gave a great indication for what they are and how they can be triggered.
Right.
What I want to know now is how do we navigate these triggers or someone else's triggers, our own or somebody else's triggers?
Great question. And what I'm going to do is share with you some anger management tools. Now,
Okay.
I realize that may seem a little like, why we're going to do anger management if I'm triggered? And it's because they work.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so the first thing you want to do, if you start to feel triggered, stop the action. Stop everything. Take a breath and check in and see what's happening in your body. So breath, then body. If I am triggered, I take a breath and I check in and I see what's happening. Sometimes I'll feel like my heart's beating really, really hard. And other times I'll feel like my throat is almost got a hand on it. Like it feels tight in here, like I can't talk. And sometimes I actually feel like I'm going to lose control of my bowels.
Okay.
So there's a lot of action going on in the body when we get triggered. And we want to tune into that. And it will help you understand how deep the trigger is. And it'll also help you start to get connected with you. Because oftentimes we just immediately go up into our brain and start thinking, and then we start trying to control the things around us. And I say, no, take a breath, find out what's going on inside your body.
Yeah.
Third thing, what are the thoughts you're having?
Mm.
Oftentimes we have voices in our heads and they're not ours. They might come from a parent, a school teacher, a coach, a religious leader, somebody that you took guidance from as a child. And maybe they were shaming in their message. Maybe they said things that pulled you down. Maybe when somebody found out that you were a survivor of violence or sexual assault, somebody blamed you or shamed you. Maybe they asked you questions like, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you fight back? Why are you telling us now? Why have you kept this a secret all these years? Whatever stupid nonsense you heard,
Right.
it might still be rattling around in your brain. You might still be kind of poisoning yourself with it. So when you get triggered, you might have a thought, a series of words that come up, and you might not. But I know for me, my father, part of the way he abused me was to denigrate my body. He always told me I was too skinny and flat chested. You know, I was 8, but that's the mind of a person who sexually abuses child.
Yeah,
You know, it's a sad thing.
true.
But how do I combat those voices? You know, one of the things I sometimes do is go, you know, shut up, daddy. Nobody cares what you think anymore. If I have to say F you, daddy, I will, because
Sure.
my emotional survival is on the line here. And
Right.
he can't hear it anyway.
Yeah.
So finding the voices that are in your head and then figuring out how you're going to change them is
Right.
really key to getting past a trigger.
Yeah.
So let's just recount what we're going to do. We take a breath. We're going to check in with our body and see how it's doing. And then we're going to find the voices in our head that are sabotaging us. And then we're going to craft a rebuttal. And if you're just finding those voices, you may not have something ready at hand, and that's okay.
Yes.
But over time, you start to become familiar with them and you can fight back. You can say no to those messages, and that will help you get grounded. But this is all of what's going on inside. And the best way to do this is just take a time out from whoever you're interacting with. And the free gift that I'm going to give you at the end of today's presentation contains explicit directions for taking a successful time out that works in relationship and builds connection. So that's really important, because most people just walk away or say, I can't do this right now, and throw their hands up, and then that damages the relationship. And also destabilizes you, because now you're kind of angry and you don't need that right now.
Sure.
Okay, so you've taken your time out, you've taken a breath, you have found the what's happening in your body and what's going on in your brain, and you have employed some affirmations or rebuttals to the voices that are sabotaging you. Now, what do you do with the person that was in front of you? You can come off of your timeout once you've got clarity about what it is you need in that connection.
Right.
And if it just depends on who this person is. If it's your partner, it's great to come back and tell them, I got triggered because of something that happened in my past. And I'm realizing that what I need right now is for you to hold me while I cry. Or what I need right now is to be alone while I go walk the dog.
Right.
Or what I need right now is to just simply watch a movie. I don't really want to talk about it right now, but maybe you could just put your arm around me.
Right.
You have to find what's going to work for you in that moment.
Yes.
Or maybe you feel like talking and you can say, I got a lot of memories coming up right now. And of course, I'll take that to my therapist. But if you're available, I'd really like to share with you what I'm remembering. Because it's hard. I don't want to carry this by myself.
Yeah.
But be careful. If you ask somebody to witness your memory, make sure that that person has the skill set for doing that. You don't want to share this with somebody who's going to minimize or interrogate.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. That's a thought. Let me just take a moment to thank you for your courage and sharing the vulnerable moments of your inner child. I don't know very many 8-year-olds who would be able to combat, the attack of a grown person or somebody significantly older than them, or stronger or more able. So this is very powerful, and it's a very necessary conversation. So I'm appreciative.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I ended up developing body dysmorphia and an eating disorder.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So this is why this conversation is so important. I think there's so many little girls that may know far more than they need to about this topic. And as a result, I think, as adults, we need to be prepared and armed to help guide and direct things as they come into our awareness.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I will also say very quickly that I have definitely, in the course of my work, spoken with multiple women of all different levels of credential, of credentials and background, and who will say that they had a very similar background to yours, similar in that, maybe there's some sort of incestuous, early experience, and rapes during college, and then again, they're trying to now have a normal relationship, and they can't figure out why it's not working.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't have a normal relationship. I have an ecstatic one.
Awesome.
And I worked my butt off to get there.
Yeah.
So I'd love to share with your viewers the steps that I took. And I want to say, it's not that every single one of us is going to take the same steps, but there
That's right.
are some broad categories of what it looks like to go from being sexually traumatized
Yes.
to being somebody who has your sexual sovereignty
Yes.
and is able to navigate into a place of sexual joy.
Yes.
It's always going to start with boundaries. Always.
Always.
So, and again, I can't say this enough. It's so important to get professional support. And I have gotten help from so many different places. I didn't just see a therapist. I also got body work, because I realized that my body carries this trauma.
Yes.
So I worked with a sexological body worker, which is something that a colleague and friend, Joseph Kramer, founded several decades ago.
Mhm.
And that focuses on releasing trauma from the genitals. I got Reiki and rolfing and other kinds of body work that helped move the trauma through the rest of my body. I also took up yoga, which is great for trauma, stretching the tissues, breathing into the tissues. Interesting things come up when you're working with the tissues. You suddenly get pictures in your head, memories, smells, thoughts, feelings. Where's that coming from? It's all in there.
Yeah.
And if you can hold it with love and curiosity, you can move through it. You don't have to get stuck.
Right.
And that's the biggest message I want to bring here today. It hurts, but it is like ripping a Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because if you just keep the Band-Aid on, it's going to fester and never heal.
Gotta get
And
the
so
air
what does
out.
that do? That tamps down our creativity and our joy and our ability to show up for life. So yes, it's hard to go through this stuff and to remember this stuff, and you can journal. I wrote an entire book that I'll never even publish one year, because when I went to bed at night with the lights on, mind you, I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with the worst stomach ache, and I thought I was going to throw up. And I would get out this journal and I'd just write about my childhood. And I hope I was done, because I was so sleepy and I wanted to go to bed. And I'd lay back down and I thought I was going to throw up again. And I'd have to keep writing until I stopped
Wow.
feeling
Yes.
nauseous. And that
Wow.
lasted for a year.
Wow.
And I was working with a therapist. I was going to 12-step support groups.
Right.
I had the lights on because I was afraid Daddy was going to come into my bedroom. And I'm a full grown woman, but it's
Yeah.
okay. I had lots of compassion for myself. There
Yes.
were days I spent under the covers in the fetal position.
Uh-oh.
I'm sharing this with you because I want you to know how painful it was. I didn't do any kind of bypass.
Right.
I went into this. I went into it deep, and I went into it full on.
Yeah.
And the reason I want you to know that is because I want you to know about the beautiful world that I live in now.
Yes.
After doing that hard work, I am partnered with someone who is so present for my process that when we make love, we often stop in the middle of it to cry.
Oh, wow.
We hold each other. We
Yes.
talk about whatever's coming up for us. We process it. And on the other side of those tears and that processing, we often wind up resuming lovemaking.
Sure.
And it's bigger and it's better and it's more expressive and it's fuller and it's more joyful.
Yes.
Because we allow ourselves to process the grief too.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we're so afraid of having these uncomfortable emotions, but if you don't have them, you'll never have the ecstasy. You'll never have this expansive joy. the laughter that goes down to the tips of
Yes.
your toes, the
Yes.
orgasms that are all over your body and take you out of your body and into the heavens. These things are available to you
Yes.
as a survivor.
Yes.
Just
And I
have to
love that
watch
you're
out for
sharing that. Yeah, because you're speaking about intimacy, a level to which I think a lot of people have not really experienced. So that is really an awesome gift for people to experience, of course, and also to look at, and in their healing and their processing, just on a day to day.
Yeah, Beverly, I think it's really important to say that I went so far as I could with my first husband.
Mm-hmm.
We were together for 14 years, but there was only so much that he was capable of.
Sure.
And we got a divorce because he relapsed around drugs and alcohol, and I'm clean and sober. That was just, we had to part ways.
Right.
But the man that I've been with now for 11 years is capable of going to some very deep, scary places emotionally.
Yes.
And so I just want to say that, when I first left my father's home, it seemed like all I pulled in were rapists.
Mm. Yeah.
And I felt like I just had this big target on my forehead or something. It just said, "Hi, I'm a survivor. You can pick on me because I won't know how to do anything except, go
Yes.
catatonic on you." And it's over the years, I have changed who I am so that the people that I attract, the people that are in my orbit, have changed too. And I've become much more discerning
Sure.
about who I would share my precious self with.
That's right.
I
That's right.
consider my vulva my most sacred temple.
Yeah.
This is a place, the holy of holies, if you will.
Yeah.
So, with that kind of regard, I'm not going to borrow another biblical term, throw my pearls before swine.
There you go. That's exactly right. That's it. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what most of our mothers tell us, right?
yes. And it's, unfortunately, sometimes that message early on
Yeah.
is also married to endure touch that you don't want. Go hug Aunt
Sure.
Mildred, whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
So we have to reclaim our ability to say no.
Yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
you know, you had talked about how do we get there. One of the things we have to do is go back and look at all the ways that our body integrity and our sovereignty was taken away from us.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe some well-meaning parent told you to finish your dinner,
Yeah.
but you were full. Go to sleep, but you weren't sleeping. Hug, uncle, aunt, whoever, and you didn't want to. And those seem really small and minor, but it still sets us up to constantly interact on a social level that's out of our honest truth. We're not actually
Right.
connected to who we are and what we
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
So reclaiming that as adults is really getting in touch with what do I like and what I don't like, what works for me,
Yeah.
what doesn't work for me. And you got to tune in and start noticing those times when you're thinking, I got this little tickle in my tummy. There's
Mm.
something isn't quite right. Don't
Yeah.
ignore it. Don't ignore it. Listen
Yeah.
to it. Ask it questions. What's going on? And
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
some just needs to be heard, and then you can go right back to what you're doing. And other times it's a big deal.
That's true. Right. Wow. Powerful. So let me ask you, and I know you've already shared some wonderful action steps, but I want to go back there again briefly. From your perspective, what action steps can be taken to alleviate the burden of trauma and heal emotional wounds?
Okay. So let's run through
Mm-hmm.
just kind of summarizing them.
Yep.
First and foremost, get help. And don't just get help from one person. No one person or one modality is going to do it. If you're suffering trauma, and myself, complex trauma. I mean,
Sure.
we've got domestic
Absolutely.
violence, incest, rape, and surviving a religious cult.
Mm.
Lots of trauma going on here. So you've got to figure out where you are on that scale and what you need. I can't tell you what you need, but know that the things that work are internal family systems, which is IFS, internal family systems,
Right.
EMDR, which is really about bilateral stimulation. And you can start doing some of that for yourself, just like this. And what it does is it just calms the nervous system and it helps you start making connections. So it's incredibly powerful and healing. Trauma-informed yoga and Kundalini yoga is great because it works with pranayams and mantras, and you don't have to be limber to do it. That's not what it's about. It's about raising those feelings up through the breath. Learning some anger management techniques like the ones that I shared with you today, so that you can navigate your triggers without having total meltdowns and being at the mercy of other people. You can pull back, take care of yourself, and navigate your surroundings so that you're safe.
Beautiful.
Getting support in groups is also incredibly powerful.
Yes, absolutely.
If it resonates with you to try a 12-step group, they have plenty of those for incest survivors. Not so many for the domestic violence survivors. I checked out a few of them and they were okay. But there's also groups that therapists lead. And there's something so healing about hearing another survivor express something that you totally relate to. And you don't feel alone anymore. You don't feel ashamed anymore. You feel so supported and seen by them.
Yeah.
And then take yourself one step further. Take yourself one step further and reclaim your sexuality. Reclaim your sexual sovereignty. Look into whether or not a sexological body worker might be the right thing for you. And look into ways that you can also start reconnecting with your sexuality in an empowered, present way that creates safe boundaries. I'm going to be teaching a workshop on July 1st about reclaiming your sexual joy after sexual assault. And you're welcome to contact me, of course, because this is what I specialize in, is helping survivors reclaim their sexuality.
Oh, okay, that was awesome. So again, I know you spoke on this already, but how do we learn how to set boundaries after we've experienced a trauma and want to heal?
So yes, I did, but let's re-summarize that. So really important to find out the ways in which you might be going into fawning or freeze. And an advanced form of freeze is tonic immobility. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't matter what you call it. You're either trying to make the perpetrator feel good about themselves so they won't hurt you anymore, or you are finding yourself unable to speak or move at all. It's just like you're frozen. So if you notice that, these can be like happen within just a few seconds even, where you just found yourself what were we talking about? I don't know what we were talking about. You've disassociated. So you want to find those places where your coping style is about leaving the room or leaving your body, or trying to get on the good side of the person who might hurt you. And I've really been uncovering my fawning. Yes, it was great when I was saving myself from being physically assaulted by the rapist, but it's not so great in my relationship. Sometimes I start fawning to my partner as if I have to somehow or another appease him. And really what I need to do is stand up and say something that could possibly make him angry. And that's okay.
Yes, it is.
He can be angry.
Yeah.
So building some tolerance for other people in our lives not being happy with us is really important to be able to have a boundary.
Yeah.
And the Exquisite Partnership Formula that I teach has got 5 steps to it. So let me lay those out for you. It's just a solid no. It's not when you're thinking, well, maybe. It's when you're like, oh, hell no. If you're a hell no, then this is what it looks like if you care about the connection with this human being who's brought you some idea. So let's pretend it's your partner, and let's pretend he wants to try something sexual that you're absolutely a hell no on. It would look like this. Oh, lots of people find that fun and interesting. I could totally see why you might want to try that. That's validating. Step 2. And I really appreciate the fact that you've shared your interest in that with me, that you brought this to me, that you were honest with me.
Right.
That's step 2, which is appreciating. The next thing we're going to do, 3. And I already know that's something I will never try. That's the hard no.
Yes.
And it is a hard no. It's not negotiable. It's not watered down. It's not couched in terms to try to save his feelings. But we're going to come by on 4 and quickly pick him up, because he's probably a little confused at this point, because you just validated him, appreciated him, and then said, hell no. So we're going to go into a redirect, and the redirect is juicy and fun and inviting, and it looks like this. But there is something I am dying to try with you. Do you want to know what it is?
Good for you. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know how long you've been in this relationship, and I don't know what kind of issues exist between the two of you. He may say, yeah, what is it? That's a pretty common response, especially from male-identified people.
Yeah.
But he might also be pouty, like, well, you didn't want to do what I want to do, so I don't want to do what you want to do.
There you go.
Okay, that's fine. Step 5, we're going to invite partnership, and it's really about extending faith in the relationship and the connection. And it looks like this. I hear you don't want to do what I suggested either, and I don't want to do what you suggested, and that's perfectly okay. I have every confidence you and I do want to share some things together. How about we get together and talk about it tomorrow when we both get home from work? I would love to talk to you about our shared desires. What do you think?
Yeah.
So that's the invitation.
That's awesome. And what I think is that we need to have more of these conversations for our young girls, and for all women, to be honest with you, but especially the young girls, because they're trapped every time.
Oh, it breaks my heart, because I mean, here we are, it's 2021. I have clients in their 20s. I can't believe how disempowered young women still are.
Yeah.
To where it's kind of like, nah, I'm not feeling it, or not tonight, or not now, or maybe later.
Completely unprepared. Yeah.
Yeah, because and the thing is that the guy is maybe a pushy guy who's trying to get something that isn't wanted to be given. But sometimes also he's just confused because, well, she said maybe later.
Yeah, that's true.
And we've got to find a language for women to be able to speak their truth boldly. Yeah. And at the same time, preserve connection, because female culture is so much about preserving our connection.
Isn't that true? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love this, but let's talk about freedom, because I love to think about what freedom from having these types of issues would look like. How do we move forward?
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful thing getting on the other side. Yeah. But I want to tell you what it looks like.
Please.
It looks like the proverbial layers of the onion.
Yeah. So
if you have moved into this place of courage, where you're going to take on the gnarly feelings, the not so good feelings, you're going to find on the other side, each time you get past one of those, there's going to be this influx of, oh, wow, I feel better than I have ever. That's amazing. And then there'll be at some point another infusion of the bad feelings. Something will trigger you. You'll remember something. And you'll go, oh, I thought I already dealt with this. Why is it coming back? Well, it's not. It's just another layer. Mm-hmm. So if you allow that to wash over you and you process it just like you did the first round, on the other side of that, there will be, oh, wow, this is even better than what I was experiencing before. Yeah. Oh, I feel more creative. I feel more expansive. My orgasms are better. I'm being nicer to my kids. Okay. And then that will go along for a while, and then another layer will come off. What'll happen is the windows get shorter. So when I first started processing the layers of this proverbial onion, I would be down for a week.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was devastating. And I could hardly function. And I didn't want to be around anybody except my therapist and my support group. Now, these many years later, having dealt with this and gone through those layers of the onion, a new layer comes and it feels just as bad as the first layer, but it only lasts a short time. And I'm telling you, literally 1 hour.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So if you can think about it as surfing,
Yeah.
you're going to ride the waves. And as you get better with your balance, you'll be able to get back up on that board and hang another 10 sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you for that. And I just want to amend something I just said. I know I spoke about potentially creating something for young women to better process their emotions during relationships, but I think we need to add young men too, because they don't have the first clue what it is. I think they're asking for, or what the proverbial hard no would mean. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
And one of the things that we have to do for our young men is stop abusing them so that they are losing connection with themselves.
yeah,
Most little boys, by the time they're 3, have really been inculcated with the idea that the last thing they want to do is be a girl.
right,
And so, right there is disrespect for the feminine,
sure,
but not just the feminine that looks like a girl, the feminine inside themselves has been
sure,
disrespected and exiled too. So, if your life has been about not acknowledging your own tender vulnerabilities and emotions, how are you going to be able to extend that to another human being?
sure.
How
And then
can
we
you
can,
intuit what they're feeling? How can you read their body language if you don't even know you have any?
and it's the majority of women that are raising these babies. So we have some real work there to do, don't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which if we could get past the homophobia that drives
Oh,
this whole thing about
there you go.
getting our young men to be men,
Yeah,
we could allow them to be human. If they're heterosexual, they're still going to be heterosexual.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay. All right. I know you started to share a little bit before about your free gift. I want to give you the opportunity to do that again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a 10,000 word, full color, gorgeous ebook, and nobody has time to read that. So I want to clue you into the 3 parts that are most important about this book. You want to find the specific steps to take a good timeout, a timeout that actually works. This is one that won't alienate the people around you or create separation. It's going to create partnership and connection. That's 1. 2, there's an awesome game in here. It's called Show Me Your Movie. It's one that my partner and I play all the time, particularly when we're shocked, astounded, and maybe just really upset that
Okay.
our partner doesn't see it our way. They don't even remember it that way. Okay, so we sit down and we suspend our movie on things and really get into our partner's movie. And it's really an intimacy builder.
Wow.
And then it doesn't even matter that we don't see things the same way. There's some way in our
Yeah.
hearts get knitted together.
Yes.
And the third thing that you're going to get is the 5 steps to the exquisite partnership that I detailed today. It'll be written out for you so you can practice it with your partner, or actually you can use it on your children. I have used the exquisite partnership formula on friends. I helped negotiate a landlord-tenant meeting using it.
Oh
So
my.
it really works to
Awesome.
help bring people together. And at the same time, you got to know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Oh, and
perfect.
by the way, 3
Uh-huh.
free podcasts come with it too.
Oh, nice. Wow.
Yeah, for those of you who just want to listen.
Yes. Yeah, we all need to be listening here. Absolutely. Oh, wow. So that is an awesome gift. We so appreciate you and are so grateful to you for sharing with us in such a deep and vulnerable way. I really honor your courage and the teaching that came as a result of you sharing. So I thank you again from the bottom of my heart on behalf of our audience. And I look forward to the growth and the opportunities that people are going to gain by using your free gifts and from the information you shared today. So
Well, thank you for creating such a safe place for this conversation.
truly the honor is mine.
Yeah, yeah. You carry such a loving, safe energy. So
Thank you.
it was easy to share this with you today.
Oh, well, I'm grateful for that because it's definitely not an easy topic that
No.
I can feel. Yeah. So we thank you again.